The small charter plane, a sturdy old Cessna, soared over the endless expanse of the Arctic tundra. John, his wife Emma, and the two children, Lucy and Jack, gazed out the windows, mesmerized by the breathtaking, yet desolate, landscape below. The family had embarked on this adventure to experience the raw beauty of the Arctic, but nature had other plans. Without warning, a fierce storm descended upon them. The sky darkened, and the plane bucked violently in the turbulent winds. The pilot, a seasoned aviator named Rick, fought to maintain control, his knuckles white as he gripped the yoke. John's heart pounded in his chest as he reached out to reassure Emma, who clutched Lucy and Jack tightly. A sudden jolt rocked the plane, and the engine sputtered. The alarm of impending disaster became all too real as the aircraft began to lose altitude rapidly. Rick shouted over the deafening wind, "Brace yourselves. We're going down." John wrapped his arms around his family, shielding them as best he could. The ground rushed up to meet them with terrifying speed. The impact was brutal. Metal screeched and groaned as the plane skidded across the icy tundra, finally coming to a shuddering halt against a snowdrift. Silence, broken only by the howling wind, settled over the crash site. For a moment, there was no movement, only the eerie stillness of the Arctic wilderness. Then, slowly, John lifted his head, his vision blurry and ears ringing. He checked on Emma, who, though shaken, appeared uninjured. Lucy and Jack were scared but alive. A wave of relief washed over him, quickly replaced by the grim reality of their situation. John's survival instincts kicked in. They had to move quickly, the frigid temperatures were already seeping into the cabin. "Everyone, we need to get out of the plane," he urged, his voice steady despite the urgency. Emma, Lucy, and Jack scrambled to follow John's lead. They pushed open the emergency exit, the icy wind biting at their exposed skin. John climbed out first, surveying the wreckage. The plane was a twisted heap of metal, its nose buried in the snow. Supplies were scattered, some irretrievable beneath the snowdrift. John's breath misted in the air as he helped Emma and the children down. They huddled together, seeking warmth. "We need to find shelter," John said, his mind racing. He knew hypothermia could set in within minutes if they didn't act fast. The plane's interior, though damaged, offered some protection from the wind. John crawled back inside, searching for anything that could help. He found a few emergency blankets, a first aid kit, and a small cache of food and water. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. Back outside, he directed Emma and the kids to the relative safety of the plane's fuselage. Using the emergency blankets and debris from the wreckage, they fashioned a crude but functional igloo-like structure. It was cramped and far from perfect, but it shielded them from the relentless wind and conserved their body heat. As they huddled together, John took stock of their situation. They were in the middle of nowhere, with no way to signal for help immediately. The storm showed no signs of letting up, and the temperature continued to drop. But giving up was not an option. John's resolve hardened, they would survive this. "Stay close, stay warm," John told his family, his voice firm. "We're going to get through this. Together." In the dim light of their makeshift shelter, John's mind churned with plans. They would need to ration their supplies, find more food, and devise a way to signal for help. It would be a grueling ordeal, but as he looked at Emma, Lucy, and Jack, he knew they had the most crucial resource of all, each other. The wind howled outside, but inside their shelter, there was a flicker of hope. They were alive, and as long as they had that, John knew they had a fighting chance. The Arctic night settled over them, an impenetrable blanket of darkness and cold. Inside their makeshift igloo, the family huddled together, drawing warmth from each other's bodies. John's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, but one thing was clear: they needed a more substantial shelter if they were to survive the relentless cold. The first light of dawn brought little relief from the biting cold. John carefully extricated himself from the family huddle and crawled out of the igloo. The plane's wreckage loomed ominously in the morning light, a stark reminder of their precarious situation. He surveyed the area, thinking back to his survival training and the documentaries he had watched about Arctic explorers. John returned to the igloo with a plan. "We need to make our shelter more secure and insulated," he told Emma. "We can use the plane's fuselage and some of the materials inside to build something more durable." Emma nodded, her face pale but determined. "What do you need us to do?" "Lucy, Jack, you can help me gather materials from the plane. Emma, can you start organizing our supplies and make sure everything that can keep us warm is inside the igloo?" They set to work, each task a crucial part of their survival strategy. John led Lucy and Jack back to the plane. They rummaged through the wreckage, finding pieces of insulation, more emergency blankets, and parts of the plane that could be repurposed. The cold made every movement laborious, but they pressed on, driven by the need to protect their family. With their salvaged materials, John began to reinforce their igloo. He used the plane's insulation to line the walls, creating a barrier against the cold. The emergency blankets were layered for additional warmth, and he fashioned a makeshift door using a piece of the fuselage. It wasn't perfect, but it was an improvement. Inside, Emma had organized their supplies meticulously. She had laid out their food and water, and created a small area for a makeshift stove using the plane's emergency kit. It would allow them to melt snow for water and warm up small portions of food. John took a moment to appreciate Emma's work. "This looks great," he said, giving her a reassuring smile. Every little bit helps. The children, though visibly exhausted, had a spark of hope in their eyes. The reinforced igloo provided a semblance of security in the harsh, unforgiving landscape. As they settled back inside, the difference was palpable. The temperature was slightly more bearable, and the wind was no longer cutting through their makeshift walls. John knew they had to stay proactive. "We need to keep our spirits up," he said, his voice steady. "Let's focus on small tasks each day. It will keep us warm and help us stay positive." They spent the day reinforcing their shelter further, gathering snow to melt for water, and rationing their food. John taught Lucy and Jack how to create an efficient melting system using the makeshift stove, ensuring they had a steady supply of drinking water. He also devised a plan for keeping watch, making sure someone was always alert for any signs of rescue or danger. Night fell again, but this time their shelter felt more secure. The family huddled together, sharing stories to keep their minds off the cold and the isolation. John spoke of famous explorers who had survived against all odds, drawing parallels to their own situation. He emphasized the importance of staying together and keeping a positive mindset. As they drifted off to sleep, the howling wind outside seemed a little less menacing. They had taken the first crucial steps towards survival, using their resourcefulness and determination to create a safe haven amidst the desolation. John knew there were many challenges ahead, but with each passing day, they were growing stronger as a family and as a team. In the heart of the Arctic, where the cold could claim lives in mere minutes, they had carved out a sanctuary. It was a testament to human ingenuity and the unbreakable bond of family. They were not just surviving, they were learning to thrive in the face of adversity. And in that, John found a deep well of hope. Days stretched into a week, and the relentless Arctic cold remained their constant companion. Their makeshift igloo provided shelter, but the dwindling food supplies loomed as an ever-present threat. John knew they needed to find more sustenance if they were to survive. The thought of his family starving was unbearable, and he resolved to find food in the most unlikely of places. One morning, as the first light of dawn crept across the icy landscape, John set out with Lucy and Jack. They trudged through the snow, their breaths visible in the frigid air. John had a plan, inspired by a survival book he had read years ago. He remembered that certain hardy plants and lichens thrived even in these harsh conditions, buried beneath the snow. "Stay close to me and keep an eye out for anything green or unusual in the snow," John instructed his children. They spread out in a line, carefully scanning the ground as they moved forward. After what felt like hours of painstaking search, Lucy called out, "Dad, over here." She pointed to a small patch of green poking through the snow. John hurried over and examined the find. It was a lichen, one of the few plants capable of surviving in the Arctic. "Good job, Lucy," John said, smiling with pride. "These lichens are edible and can provide us with some much-needed nutrients." They continued their search, uncovering more patches of lichen and even a few hardy Arctic berries clinging to life under the snow. John knew it wasn't much, but it was a start. He gathered their finds and headed back to the igloo, his spirits lifted by their small success. Inside the shelter, Emma greeted them with a mixture of relief and curiosity. "What did you find?" "Lichens and some berries," John replied. "It's not much, but it's something." Emma nodded, her eyes reflecting the same determination John felt. "We can make this work." They set about preparing a meal, using the lichens and berries. John boiled the lichens to soften them and make them more palatable, while Emma mashed the berries into a paste. The children watched, intrigued and hopeful. As they sat down to eat, John spoke to his family. "This may not be a feast, but it's food. Every bit of energy we get from this will help us survive. We're doing great, and we'll keep finding ways to make it through." The meal, though meager, lifted their spirits. It was a testament to their resilience and ability to adapt to their environment. They were learning to live off the land, to find sustenance in the most unlikely places. Over the next few days, John led more foraging expeditions, teaching Lucy and Jack how to identify edible plants and lichens. They explored further from their crash site, mapping out the area in their minds and marking places where food could be found. One day, during one of their excursions, they stumbled upon an unexpected bounty. Jack, wandering a little ahead, found a small patch of Arctic willows. The willow bark could be used to make a type of tea, rich in vitamins and minerals. "Dad, look what I found!" Jack shouted excitedly. John rushed over and examined the find. "Jack, this is amazing! Arctic willows are a great source of nutrients. We can make tea from the bark." They harvested the willows and returned to the igloo, their spirits buoyed by the discovery. That evening, as they sipped the warm, bitter tea, they felt a renewed sense of hope. The Arctic, though harsh and unforgiving, was providing for them. The daily routines now included foraging trips, carefully rationing their finds, and making the most of their meager supplies. The children adapted quickly, learning survival skills that would stay with them forever. Each small victory in their quest for food brought them closer together as a family. John reflected on their journey so far. They had faced immense challenges, but they were learning to overcome them with ingenuity and perseverance. The Arctic, once an enemy, was becoming a teacher, revealing its secrets to those willing to look closely and think creatively. As the days passed, the family grew stronger, their bonds deepening with each shared meal and every small triumph. They had found sustenance in the most unlikely of places, proving that with determination and a little bit of luck, even the harshest environments could be conquered. In the vast, frozen expanse of the Arctic, they were not just surviving, they were learning to thrive, one day at a time. The days turned into weeks, and though their spirits remained strong, the isolation of the Arctic wilderness weighed heavily on the family. They had managed to secure food and shelter, but the hope of rescue seemed increasingly distant. John knew that if they were to be found, they needed a way to communicate their location to the outside world. One morning, as they gathered for the daily rationed meal, John addressed his family. "We've done well to survive this long, but we need to find a way to signal for help. We can't stay out here forever." Emma nodded in agreement. "What do you have in mind?" John thought back to his scouting days and the various survival shows he had watched. We need to create a signal that can be seen from the air. Something that stands out against the snow. The children listened intently as John laid out his plan. We'll use parts of the plane to create a large SOS signal in the snow. We can also use the emergency flare, but we need to make sure it's used at the right moment. They set to work, gathering pieces of the plane's fuselage, reflective materials, and anything that could help them create a visible signal. John led Lucy and Jack out to a flat area of the tundra, where they began to lay out the materials in the shape of an SOS. The work was physically demanding, especially in the freezing temperatures, but the children were determined. They arranged the pieces meticulously, ensuring the signal was large enough to be seen from the sky. John checked their work, making adjustments to maximize visibility. After hours of labor, they stepped back to admire their creation. The SOS signal, constructed from shiny metal and reflective materials, stood out starkly against the white snow. It was a beacon of hope in the vast, desolate landscape. "Great job, everyone," John said, his voice filled with pride. "Now we need to be patient and vigilant. We should take turns keeping watch for any planes or helicopters." They returned to their igloo, where Emma had prepared a warm drink from the Arctic willows. As they sipped the bitter tea, the family felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had taken another crucial step toward their rescue. The days passed slowly as they took turns keeping watch. Each time they heard the distant roar of an engine, their hearts leapt with hope, only to sink again when the sound faded away. Despite the disappointments, they remained resolute, their eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of help. One evening, as John and Lucy stood watch together, they heard the faint sound of a helicopter. They strained their eyes against the fading light, searching the sky. "There!" Lucy shouted, pointing to a small speck in the distance. John's heart raced. "Quick, get the flare!" Lucy scrambled back to the igloo, returning with the emergency flare. John held it aloft, waiting for the helicopter to come closer. When it was within range, he ignited the flare, sending a bright, fiery signal into the sky. The helicopter circled above them, its spotlight scanning the ground. John and Lucy waved frantically, hoping to catch the pilot's attention. After a few tense moments, the helicopter turned and headed directly toward their SOS signal. Emma and Jack emerged from the igloo, their faces filled with hope and relief. The helicopter hovered above the signal, then slowly descended to land on a flat patch of snow nearby. The wind from its rotors whipped the snow into a frenzy, but the family didn't mind. Their ordeal was finally coming to an end. As the helicopter touched down, a rescue team emerged, rushing to meet them. The team leader, a rugged man with a kind face, approached John. "We got your signal. Are you all okay?" John nodded, his voice choked with emotion. "Yes, we are. Thank you for finding us." The rescue team quickly assessed their condition and helped them into the warmth of the helicopter. As they lifted off, John looked down at the SOS signal one last time. It had been their lifeline, a testament to their ingenuity and determination. Inside the helicopter, the family huddled together, overwhelmed with relief. They were finally safe, their ordeal in the Arctic coming to an end. The children, exhausted but happy, leaned against their parents as they flew toward civilization. John looked at Emma, his heart full of gratitude. "We did it," he said softly. "We survived." Emma smiled, tears of joy in her eyes. Together, as the helicopter soared over the frozen landscape, the family knew that their bond had been forged in the fires of adversity. They had faced the worst the Arctic had to offer and emerged stronger, their love and determination carrying them through. And as they left the icy wilderness behind, they carried with them the knowledge that they could overcome anything, as long as they were together. The helicopter soared above the Arctic wilderness, carrying John, Emma, Lucy, and Jack toward safety. The family huddled together, their bodies thawing and spirits lifting with each passing minute. Despite the relief, the journey to complete safety was far from over. The Arctic had one last trial in store for them. The rescue team explained their situation. The helicopter could only take them as far as a remote outpost, a small research station used by scientists studying the Arctic environment. From there, they would need to await a larger rescue plane that could transport them back to civilization. As the helicopter touched down at the research station, the family was greeted by a group of scientists. Dr. Elena Ruiz, the station's lead researcher, welcomed them with warm smiles and hot beverages. "You must be exhausted," she said, ushering them inside. "Let's get you warmed up and checked out by our medical team." The station was a cozy haven compared to the harsh tundra. The family gratefully accepted the warmth and hospitality. A medic examined them, ensuring they had no serious injuries or frostbite. They were given warm clothing, hot meals, and a place to rest. That night, as they settled into the station's bunk room, John reflected on their journey. They had come so far and endured so much. Yet, the reality of their isolation in the Arctic was still pressing. He knew they had to stay vigilant and patient until the rescue plane arrived. The next morning, Dr. Ruiz gathered the family. "We've received word that a rescue plane is en route," she said. It should arrive in 2 days, weather permitting. Relief washed over them, but it was tempered by the knowledge that the Arctic's weather was unpredictable. John nodded. "Thank you, Dr. Ruiz. We appreciate everything you've done for us." In the days that followed, the family found solace in the research station's routines. They helped with small tasks, eager to contribute and stay active. Lucy and Jack were fascinated by the scientists' work, and Dr. Ruiz took the time to explain their research on Arctic wildlife and climate. One evening, as they sat around the station's common room, Dr. Ruiz shared a story. "You know, the Arctic teaches us many things," she said. "About resilience, adaptation, and the importance of community. It's a harsh environment, but it also reveals the strength within us." Her words resonated deeply with John and Emma. They had experienced firsthand the truth of those lessons. The family had grown stronger, not just as individuals, but as a unit. Their bond had been tested and fortified in ways they never could have imagined. On the second day, as promised, the rescue plane's arrival was imminent. The scientists monitored the weather and communicated with the incoming aircraft. John, Emma, Lucy, and Jack packed their few belongings, ready to finally leave the Arctic behind. Just as they were preparing to board the snowcat that would take them to the makeshift runway, a blizzard warning was issued. The rescue plane was forced to delay its landing. The family felt a pang of disappointment, but they understood the necessity of safety. Dr. Ruiz reassured them, "It's just a temporary setback. The plane will land as soon as the weather clears." The blizzard hit with full force, and the research station was engulfed in a whiteout. The wind howled, and visibility dropped to near zero. The family huddled inside, grateful for the sturdy walls of the station. They used the time to reflect on their journey and the remarkable resilience they had shown. When the storm finally abated, the world outside was transformed into a pristine, snow-covered landscape. The scientists confirmed that the rescue plane was once again en route. The family donned their gear and boarded the snowcat, which rumbled across the tundra to the makeshift runway. As the rescue plane touched down, the family felt a wave of emotions: relief, gratitude, and a sense of closure. They climbed aboard, settling into the warm cabin. The plane's engines roared to life, and they took off, leaving the Arctic behind. During the flight, John held Emma's hand, looking out at the shrinking expanse of ice and snow. "We did it," he said softly. "We survived." Emma smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. "We did." Together, Lucy and Jack, sitting across from them, were already chatting excitedly about the adventures they would tell their friends. They had endured an incredible ordeal and come out stronger for it. As the plane carried them back to civilization, the family knew that they had learned invaluable lessons about resilience, ingenuity, and the strength of their bond. They had faced the worst the Arctic could throw at them and emerged triumphant. The Arctic had tested them, but it had also revealed their deepest strengths. They had not just survived, they had thrived, supporting each other every step of the way. And as they flew toward the warmth and familiarity of home, they carried with them the unshakable knowledge that they could overcome any challenge, as long as they faced it together.